Hello and welcome to episode 90 of Toward a Better Life. This is your host, Kevin Pennell. You're in for a real treat on this episode. I'm welcoming Tim Robinson, and we're going to step into the future. You're right. You heard it correctly. We're going to step into the future while we look at the past. You figure it out. And we will in a little bit. And we're also going to have Cate Tunney here. She's going to share some of her writing with us following the interview. As I've mentioned a couple of times recently, Toward a Better Life features like-minded people sharing their stories, ideas, and activities on what we can do to generate a better life individually and collectively. That, dear friends, includes you, the listener. If you want to share some prose, poetry, storytelling, or music, I'd love to hear from you, and I have, and that's why we're starting to feature some of you folks on the program. Send it to me, Kevin, at towardabetterlife.com. That's Kevin, towardabetterlife.com. And by the way, if it's an audio file, it's best if you send it to me in an MP3. If you enjoy the episode, if you learned something today, please do consider following the show, subscribing through your favorite podcast platform like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, to name a few, and please be sure to leave a review. A free way to support our show is by leaving a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. It's a chance to tell us what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it too. Now for the interview portion. We're going to explore nature from a little different perspective with Tim Robinson, who loves anything to do with the natural world. He created Life of Earth in a Year, Past, Present, and Future. Launched it in 2022. Tim presents it at an in-person and online gathering as well. I had the opportunity to see Tim share some of his presentation a short time ago on Tea with a Druid with Philip Cargam, which is a program featured on YouTube. Tim has a fascinating perspective of Earth's past, present, and you got it, future, potential future. And you're really going to enjoy it. Let's take a look at Life of Earth in a Year. Today I'm talking with Tim Robinson on Toward a Better Life. Good day to you, Tim. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Kevin. And
Good.
you?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for asking. So,
Excellent.
and you're in bright and beautiful late afternoon Brussels, and we're over here in the east of the United States. So,
Yep,
we have an interesting time delay, but it's
exactly.
amazing what you can do with Zoom these days.
Well, it certainly is. And I wish it were bright and beautiful here. It's a bit grey, but let's not complain.
It's a day. And we're about to find out about time, and we're about to find out about all kinds of really unique stuff. So everybody, the way I got acquainted with Tim Robinson was on a program on YouTube that is sponsored by the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. It's called Tea with a Druid with Philip Cargam. And I watched the program with that featured Tim, and he had a very unique approach and a very unique perspective on the timelines. And rather than stealing a lot of stuff, let's just kind of roll with it a little bit and maybe tell our listeners a little bit, Tim, about Tim and what your project is.
Sure. Pleased to do so, Kevin. So I think I should start from the beginning.
Sure.
When I was 9, believe it or not, I watched a program by the British broadcaster, naturalist David Attenborough called Life of Earth. Sorry, Life on Earth.
Right.
And that TV series included a timeline. And even though I was only 9, I still remember it. So the Life on Earth TV program, in that, he portrayed Earth being formed at midnight, and now it was the end of the day. And the whole point of that was, when did humanity appear? And the whole idea was only a few seconds ago. So he tried to give people watching the show in the late 70s an idea of vast expanses of time, and we've only just turned up. And that got me thinking a few years later, and it's been rolling around in my head. I found more of these timelines, and done in different ways. But they all have one thing in common, is they stop at today. So they're compressing the history of either life on the planet or of the life of the planet itself and stopping today. And I searched and I searched, and I couldn't actually find one that included the future, which I thought was a bit odd, because in our lives, often in a business environment, people are concerned with budgets, on predictions, on forecasts, on how much have we got left as far as resources or money or whatever goes. And so, as I couldn't find one, I made my own.
There you go.
And so that's what I'd like to share.
Excellent. And before we get much further, we chatted a little bit, everyone, about this. And I will tell you this, that Tim has really produced quite the poster. And I would encourage you that if you're struck by this particular episode of Toward a Better Life, take a moment and go pull that poster from his website. And obviously, if you're driving a car, please don't do this. But I can tell you, I can tell you that if you hold this podcast for a later time and pull up the chart, the poster that Tim has created, it is well worth it to do so. And so that being said, Tim, could you share with us what that website is where they can find this? And everyone as well, this is also going to be in the show notes. So if you need to have a link instead. So let's just begin by saying, how do we find this poster, Tim?
Well, simple as life-of-earth.org. Life-of-earth.org. Lifeoferth.org with dashes in between the words. And there's a simple tab called Poster, and you can download it there.
Yeah. And I can tell you that the website is very user-friendly. I've wandered all over it. That's just one piece, the poster, because Tim has got a blog there. He's got a lot of really interesting information. And I'm actually going to slip over there really quick just so that people can get an idea what you might find. And that is, if you go there, you'll see Life of Earth in a Year, Past, Present, Future. Of course, his homepage, what's today's date, poster, your feelings. And I'll let Tim share about the importance of that little section on your feelings, the blog and action and contact. Everything is right there. But if you want to, I'm going to actually, everybody, I'm going to pause for a couple of seconds so that you have the opportunity to say, oh, here's where I can start watching. So we'll just give it a few seconds, right, beginning now. Right. Okay. So, we talk about Toward a Better Life as the premise of the program, and what has a timeline got to do with Toward a Better Life? And I think part of that has to do with some of the comments that I saw when we were watching that Tea with the Druid episode with Philip Cargam. Some of the comments that came through with some of the viewers of that was up on YouTube. And by the way, you can actually go to YouTube and find that through Tea with the Druid spot on YouTube from a previous recording. I think it was last July. Some of the comments that came through like people may become apathetic when they have the sense of the world is coming to an end. It also, to some, it makes life seem more precious when you have that sense that existence is at some point no longer existing. So it's going to be interesting. Tim, I'm just going to leave it with you, and let's just kind of begin right at January 1st. But I think one of the things that's really cool, and I think we can still do it even though this is audio, I think one of the things you brought up was everybody give us an idea about what time of year it is. So however it was that you said that, so I'll let you frame it.
Exactly. So the pitch of this, bit of audience participation is, let's just imagine that the 1st of January is the date on which the Earth formed. And in this exercise, let's imagine that 31st of December is when it will no longer cease to exist because it will have been evaporated by the sun as it expands. So from it forming to it, no longer being something that we can call the Earth. If we plot that, so 1st of January to 31st of December, where does that leave us now? What date is it today? So you can have a bit of a think yourself where you think we are. Well, are we in the middle, at the beginning, at the end
And during
of this solar journey?
and during the discussion when I was watching this, there were all kinds possibilities. I saw February, March, April. I saw July. I saw December. So, whatever
Yeah.
you think it might be.
Mm. And so, well, if you plot it like that, it comes that we're on now, today would be the 17th of May. So we're getting towards 2/3 halfway through the history of this, or the whole life of this planet. So that's what I've plotted on this annual calendar here. So okay, great. Yeah, Tim. So what do we do with that? What's the interest in knowing that? And I think that's really what I want to share through this project is that perspective. And so, Kevin, what I'll do is just highlight a couple of things that I think jump off the page when you look at it with so much perspective. The first one really is how quickly life appeared on our planet. So on this annual calendar, it's just after the middle of January, and life appeared. Bang! Almost 4 billion years ago, life appeared. Okay, simple life, but it's still life. So rocks were only just solidified, and life turns up. So that's one of the first things that it makes really obvious. And the second thing is that, well, life went about its business for until about the end of May, but didn't really want to be much. It was quite happy with being quite simple. And paleontologists apparently call this the boring billions of the period of February, March, and through to April, where life was in a very simple form, really quite content with just being and doing something really, really useful, which was polluting the atmosphere with oxygen. So which we find quite useful all those years later. The second thing I think that you can see really, really quickly is that there's a whole traffic jam of events at the beginning of May. And there we've got the Cambrian explosion, we've got plants and insects turning up. And so, really, amphibians, flying insects, dinosaurs, mammals, all of that happens on this calendar in about a 2-week period from the beginning of May until roughly now. So that period shows the immense activity that was going on our home planet at the beginning of May. The other point I think is quite interesting to see is that you've got the Cambrian explosion very quickly, okay, millions of years later, but on this scale, very quickly followed by the first extinction. Then plants and insects and amphibians appearing, then the second extinction, and then more life forms appearing, then the third extinction, and so on and so forth through the 5 extinctions. So it seems that this sort of shows to me that life really does like a bit of, when the cards are reshuffled, a bit of a shake-up. And actually life does quite well from that. On the long, if you look at it in the long scale, it seems almost to thrive from the deck of cards being reshuffled, as we can see from the growing amount of species that bounce back, a new species forming that bounce back so quickly after an extinction. So those are the couple of things that I would highlight up until now. people have done this very much and very well in other timelines, including, I should mention, the Deep Time Walk, that is an excellent project where you can do the same thing, just doing a walk of along these 4.5 billion years. So the walk is done over 4.5 kilometers to get to where we are now. So, that's an example of another project that does a great job of doing it up until now. But then what? Here's the big question. Yeah. So we're here we are, 17th of May. Now, if you're looking at the poster, you'll see there's two sides to it. So let's stay with the first side, where we've got the full year, and then we can zoom in on the second side. But let's stay with the first side. Is that we're looking at this from such a distant perspective that actually, humanity is lost in the details here. We can't see it. So this is essentially the information that I've got from available sources, most of them Wikipedia, on what is currently held to be generally accepted ideas of what will happen in the future. Most of it based around the physics of our solar system. And I think really the first thing to point out there is, well, the sun, as it is running out of fuel, it's gradually cooling and is growing in luminosity and growing in size. And so therefore, it actually becomes very clear on Earth by about sort of beginning of June that the sun is increasing in luminosity and things are getting warmer. So this is far beyond, in scales of time, far beyond our current very deep concerns about climate change. But here is, if we ignore human activity, the sun is going to heat up, it is going to grow, and its radiation is going to increase the temperature on Earth significantly by about beginning of June. And that's going to have, well, one first rather disastrous effect is that it's going to cause plants to go extinct as the carbon cycle breaks down, and as plate tectonics also slows. Again, as I say, these are things that I've referenced on the website to the pages on Wikipedia where I found this information from. So you can always check it out and disagree with it if you like, and contribute to that Wikipedia discussion. But there we go. So we've got essentially in about a month's time from now, we've got plants going extinct, and then multicellular life forms, of course, following pretty soon after that. The plants on which they depend will go. And then, so by about July, essentially, with the last oceans evaporating as the sun gets hotter and hotter, essentially from about July, the Earth returns to a pretty uninhabitable rock, because there in the beginning of July, the sun's habitable zone has moved outside the Earth's orbit. So in other words, it's no longer possible for this planet to host life that's dependent on water, essentially, because all the water's being burnt off. And then, to cut a long story short, this continues. Earth gets hotter and hotter, and Earth's surface melting in around August, and the Earth's axis becoming increasingly unstable as the moon is more and more distant. The moon is gradually moving away from us. We don't notice this because it's moving so slowly from our point of view, but that is the case. And then towards the end of the year, essentially, we're left with a planet that is similar to some of the other rocky planets around the sun, uninhabitable, and one that used to be a host to the life that we know today. So that's on one side of it. Yeah. And you might think, well, oh, great. Yeah, super, Tim. Doesn't really mean much to me because I can't see where we fit in. Well, if you flip the poster and go to the other side, you can see that I've zoomed in to either side of where we are now. So the first being the last hour and the next hour, and I've plotted some key events along there. So you can see in the last hour, apes appearing, human-like apes, Australopithecus, and then things we can really relate to, like the use of fire, cooking, modern humans evolving, and then where we are right now. And then what happens next?
There you go. What happens next?
Yeah. What happens next? Of course, on this scale, in really only a few minutes' time, the interglacial period that we're in is going to end, and we'll move into another period. And things will erode by about in a million years' time. The Pyramid of Giza will be, according to predictions, eroded into unrecognizability. Glass objects that are currently around will have eroded, glass being something that erodes very slowly. The interesting, apparently, the Apollo footprints on the moon will have faded. And there's an interesting one I found called the Memory of Mankind Project. And this very interesting project, which actually makes an archive of things that people contribute and are thinking are worth keeping forever, for all eternity. It's planned to last a million years, and on this scale, well, that's until 1 o'clock in the morning. So, how far is forever?
Yeah, exactly.
When is forever? And that project puts it at a million years, which from our point of view as humans, yeah, it's an awful long time. It's far longer than 3 times longer than we've been around as modern humans. So it certainly is a long time. But on this scale, from the planet's point of view, it's a blink of an eye.
And I just noticed the Space Probe Pioneer 10 passes near the star of Aldebaran, and I'm going, wow.
Yeah.
And that was launched when?
That was I think it was in the mid-70s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so we've got space probes actually in other constellations by about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
That's assuming we're at midnight now. So in 2 hours' time, our space gear would be around other stars. So that's on the hours. And okay, that's still a bit far-fetched, you could say. It doesn't really mean much still. So we zoom in a bit further to the last and the next minutes, either side of where we are now. And there you can see us coming out of the last ice age 22,000 years ago. That was on this scale a minute ago. And then about half a minute ago, development of agriculture, and then shortly after that, cities and Pyramid of Giza, Stonehenge, etc. And that brings us right up to where we are today. And then what can you plot for the next few hundred years or few thousand years? Well, one of the things that I found references to is the end of natural resources, the last of which being end of coal in about 460 years' time, and also prediction that the Sahara Desert will become tropical again. That would be in about 40 seconds' time on this scale, so in 15,000 years. And so on and so forth. There are various things that we can already say about the near or the future as far as the next tens of thousands of years ago. But still, tens of thousands of years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So that's the last zoom that I do on the second page of the poster. It's all described on the web pages as well, if you prefer. And there you've got the last and the next second. So now we're down to,
we're in seconds as opposed to hours and days. Yeah,
exactly. So this is what's happened in the last seconds. So here we're talking about hundredths of seconds. And then, so that's how close it is to where we are now. And so I've plotted on a few elements from recent history there, such as Industrial Revolution, human population exceeding 2 billion in 1927. And so these come in quite quickly, taking us to now. And there, if we ignore for a moment anthropocentric climate change, we can see that the human population would peak, according to the United Nations, at just under 11 billion in 2100. That's in a 0.2 of a second, 0.2 of a second from now, and natural resources coming to an end. And an interesting one that I found was somebody extrapolating from if the reproduction rate of humanity continues at the current rates of Germany or Japan, humanity will have become extinct in 2400. So that's in 1 second from now. So that was an interesting one to plot on this.
Yeah, so that's and everyone, for perspective, and if you don't have the chart in front of you, and once again, go to the show notes, download it, and you can get a really good perspective on what Tim has done with this, because it can be, and I would say this in compliment to Tim's work, if he had not turned it over and looked at it from another perspective, to bring it in and see where we are. Some people are going to say, "Oh, wow, this whole thing is about doom and gloom." And basically, he's saying the world's coming to an end. Well, I hate to tell you this, but that's right. However, I remember from the Tea with the Druid episode, he mentioned that we're roughly at 4.5 billion years from the point of what we know as Earth being created. And Tim, I don't know if you've said it already, but you've said it once or twice, but to be really specific, we've got another 7.5 billion years to go before this is really gone. And what was it? Another million years for life as we know it to cease. So
that's right.
We got a ways to go, but
oh yeah, exactly. There is time, so don't panic. So that's on the, I would say, as a as a qualifier on that. That's from this scale. So from life on the planet, at this scale, it's showing us that, well, life bounces back. It's been through extinctions before. It actually seems to be strengthened by them.
Yep.
And so if we're thinking about the future of life on this planet, there seems to be good reason to hope that it will thrive for the next billion years.
Yeah.
However, the question that concerns us, because we're of course concerned about our own existence, is what about us? What does this mean for us on this planet? So, well, if we're talking about us as in mammals, well then yeah, there's almost certainly a great future ahead of us. If we're talking about us as humans, then obviously then that turns into a different conversation, because it certainly seems to be that we're putting our own existence at peril in the short term. So my project isn't about that. The focus isn't about our current activity and its impact on the planet. It's more about the longer term. If you take a step back away from human concerns, what is the evolution, the process of evolution of life on this planet like in the past and also in the future? So that's where I'm focusing this project. And as you said, Kevin, the very interesting thing is the feelings that this evokes in people. such as you mentioned it. Well, so what? So therefore, okay, Tim. So you're saying we're all going to die anyway. So I might as well do whatever I like and have absolutely no regard for the future because we're all going down the drain anyway. But as you said, that was always the case. So I think that reaction is perfectly normal. It's perfectly understandable, and it just shows in a way that we seem, for some reason, I think collectively, to somehow have got the idea that we're around forever, that humanity is around for forever because I don't know whether it's because we see ourselves to be the pinnacle of creation or whatever over the last 500 years or so. People have gone into the history and the philosophy and the theology behind humanity's view of its own place on the planet.
And then there's pieces in there too when you stop and think about it that we've heard discussions about we could be in a multidimensional space, and if there's another dimension, what Earth is there? And we're dealing with Earth. We're not dealing with Andromeda. We're not dealing with the Pleiades. And, how long will they be around? So it's all, when you really look at it that way. And one of the things I remember you mentioning about was a relative or a friend. You took them outside and you let them look it through a telescope, and you showed them Jupiter, and they saw the moons of Jupiter and how it was, it was shocking to them, wasn't it?
Yep. Yeah, it freaked the poor friend out. Because suddenly there was a feeling of being so small that this friend of mine hadn't realized before. Just seeing the fact that you can actually see with your naked eye in a telescope a planet with its moons and count the moons around it.
Yeah, and you think maybe I'm wrong, but aren't one or two of those moons really close to the size of Earth?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and you've got it looks like a speck in front of Jupiter, and you say, "Wow, wait a minute."
Yeah, exactly.
What am I missing here?
Exactly. So this idea of, well, in this enormous scheme of things, this enormous scale, what am I? And that's one of the things that comes back in the reactions that I get from people. I think it goes one of two ways and might go from one to the other. First of all, as we've just said, is, oh, wow, this freaks me out. And it's slightly depressing. The other one is maybe linked to that, the opposite of it, which is, wow, so all of these things had to come together. You can see on it, essentially, it is I suppose, the idea of space dust, just forming, the basic elements that came together to form the fact you, me, Zoom, this poster, poetry, anything, all forms of life, beauty. And that, if we think of it, if when I look at the poster and show it to people, and you see that, okay, you've got some basic elements that are coming together about 4.5 billion years ago, and those same elements will be, be in a similar state, vaporized, and then go off wherever they will go to in the solar system in about 7.5 billion years. Those things have all come together in such a way to form me right now. And that evokes in quite a lot of people, as you've mentioned, a feeling of awe, of wonder, of maybe there's an element of magic in there.
Oh yeah,
religious beliefs, and gratitude. That I am so lucky to be here where I am now. If I look at everything that's happened before and everything that's going to happen in the future, the fact that after this call, I'm going to go to a bar around the corner with some friends and have a beer, that is really quite astounding that that can happen.
And, and
on this planet.
yeah, and we revert back to the thing. It makes life seem that much more precious.
Mm,
And in spite of the fact that it is kind of dooming and glooming, but still we've got 7.5 billion years to go. Uh, at the same token, we know from a physics perspective that yeah, it's going to be basically a giant rock again, but
mhm,
it had to start from someplace. So there you go. You're going to
mhm.
start all over again. So
Yep.
you do have life and death, and
Mhm.
I'm going to give Philip some, mention again because his picture was ideal. That you have, think about a rose. You have a beautiful rose, and you
Mhm.
see it begin to bud, and it begins to flourish, and it shows up bright and beautiful, and it's an award-winning rose, but it's only around for a few days. And then what does it do? It dies off, but it also will reproduce and it will
Mhm.
continue on. So life itself is like that when we think about, how many children were born during this podcast when you think about
Yep.
it.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
And at the
Mm,
same token, how many people
mhm.
died during this podcast? And it's just when you look at it that way, we recognize that life truly is precious.
Mhm.
And listeners have heard me say the term before, use the phrase before, that I like to think of life as a school, and we're in school to learn how to become better humans. And
Mhm.
some may say, well, if the world's coming to an end, why should I be concerned about being a better human or better spirit or better soul? How about this? Because.
Mm. Mhm. Exactly. Mm, mm,
Mm,
mm. There's a quote I've put on the website, which I quite like from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, where
yes.
Frodo says, "Oh, sometimes I just wish none of this had ever happened." And Gandalf, when he's toiling with the destruction of the ring and all of this, why did it come to him? Uh, Gandalf says, "Well, it's not for us to decide the time that is given to us. It is for us to decide what we do with it,
Hmm.
essentially." And so I think that's really what my feeling about this is, and I go into this on the action page of the website. I'm certainly not going to be doling out ideas of what individuals should do. The only thing I would have an opinion about that would be that I think it's increasingly important for us individually to take the action that we feel is the correct thing to do and to do it without delay.
Hmm.
Whatever that is, whatever we individually think is the right thing to do, we've got a wonderful opportunity of being alive on this planet. And there is, however, an urgency to make sure we do all we can to provide ourselves a sustainable future in the very, very short term. So I'm talking about 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years.
Hmm.
And so that is another that that's an action that I would say that is important to me. However that translates for each individual, of course, that's for up to them to decide.
And it's this, I see it, your aim is to be a catalyst, helping others make the changes they feel are right. And that's this whole site, yes, is a catalyst to me.
Mhm.
And I really appreciated you being with us because it's what I wanted to accomplish. Because a lot of times on our program on Toward a Better Life, we talk about a lot of important matters. We recently had something about Pilates. Now that's completely way off from what we were just talking about, but it's a way to improve your body. It's a way to keep your body and the functions of your body viable. And then we have in here about eating habits, and we talk about relationships, and we talk about all these different things, and it's whatever the person needs to address now in their life to create a better life for themselves.
Mhm.
And, why should I do this? And then what we want to do is just go to what we've been talking about. One thing that I remember so well is we're not going to be here forever.
Mhm.
So what do I do? And there was a saying that a friend of mine used to talk about. He says, well, you're not going to be here tomorrow.
Mhm.
And I had to think about that. And I said, what exactly do you mean by that? And he says, you cannot say with 100% certainty that you will be here tomorrow.
Mhm. Mhm.
Anything can happen
Mhm.
physiologically, externally, whatever it is. So between now and my time, what do I do with my time? And you go back to that lovely phrase from Gandalf.
Mhm.
I'm given this time
Mhm.
and evoke small acts of kindness and love and
Mhm.
understanding. So, oh my.
Exactly. I would also like to add that obviously, if anybody's watching this and thinking, oh, so who's Tim to put all these dates and things? These are things I've just found. Huh? So they have the merit of existing as elements that are predicted or known about the past or predicted about the future. Obviously, you might have your own. You can let me know, and I'll gladly tell you where they fit on the calendar. But also, it's worth what it's worth. Huh? Of course, this is a schematic calendar. It's just an exercise. Of course, the Earth didn't form on a split second on the 1st of January. It took, huge amounts of time. And of course, it isn't going to suddenly get vaporized in the blink of an eye. And also the timeline, the estimations of when that will happen vary quite widely. So yes, you might find other sources that would say, oh, there aren't 7.5 billion years left. There are 6 or 8. Who knows?
Hmm.
It's just an illustration as a conversation starter, and also to get us think about our place now.
Yes.
And that's what I would say. I would very much appreciate if listeners would share their feelings on the website. There's a page for that. You can add your feelings on that page or write to me. And I would be very happy to include those on the website. And yes, and invite listeners to use this work as they feel fit. It's free. It's copyleft. All I would ask is that you reference me if you use it. You can, do whatever you like with it. You can use it in discussions as a conversation starter. You can, really over to you as far as that goes, as far as using this starting point for reflection. So thank you very much, Kevin, for offering me the chance to talk with you about it.
Yeah. And it's a very dynamic website that you've got. Once again, everyone, it's life-of-earth.org. And when you get up there, you'll see a complete menu there. It has home, what's today's date, poster, your feelings, blog, action, contact. And I'm going to
Mhm.
leap right out there and say, Tim, probably the easiest thing to do is go right over to the extreme right on your website where it says contact. Click that, and you'll be able to get in touch. And
Yep.
just so everyone knows, it really works because that's how I connected with Tim
Mhm.
after the fact.
Excellent.
And I have to tell you, too, he was pretty quick, and I really do
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Well, that's
Um,
good. And it's available in French if that
okay.
happens to be the whole thing's available in French. If that happens to be your preferred language, that's where my language abilities end. So,
Tell us why it's French.
well, my wife's French and I live in a French-speaking city. So,
Well, there you go.
yeah, there we go.
Those would be definite motivators. So another thing, Tim, is we've talked about this and we're on Zoom, and you've talked about how you like to share this. are there opportunities for people to reach out to you in the sense of maybe having group meetings or anything like that via Zoom? Or obviously you're in Europe, but are there times where you do this presentation outside of this
Mm.
media?
Yeah, very much so. I've done I've given talks about this at physical events, of course, close to where I am here in Belgium. But naturally, I would be more than happy to take part in any online talks or meetings, discussions that any of the listeners would think I could contribute to.
Okay, great. We'll do that.
Great.
So,
Yeah.
Tim, I always like to ask my guests, take some time here if we need to, but I
Hmm.
always like to ask my guests, what does Tim do to create a better life for himself?
Yeah. In addition to investing my time in my work, working for the cause that I think, working for a cause, working for a cause that I think is laudable. I'm also in a process of learning to love myself. And that might sound a bit odd, but it is for somebody that is very much focused on the well-being of others. That's actually a journey that I'm on personally, is to really look inside and realize that I owe it to myself to look after myself as well. And that will ultimately help me in my relations with anybody else that I come into contact with. So that's what I would say is what I'm doing to go toward a better life. It's a journey that sounds very simple, but for me is quite a challenge. But I'm very much pleased to have embarked upon it.
Well, this has been, I would say, perhaps beyond delightful. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with me as you have, Tim. This has been wonderful. And, by all means, folks, obviously, he touched a nerve with me in having him on the show, and I can tell you that if you do check it out, it will give you a moment to pause and think about our own values and our own goals and what we can do to create a better life for ourselves. So, Tim, I invite you to go enjoy life on Earth for the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kevin. You too.
A lot of interesting thoughts. Thank you so much, Tim Robinson, for sharing with us on this portion of Toward a Better Life. Our next portion is going to be something we've started to feature, which is very special as well, I think. It's opportunities for folks just like you and I that can come on, just like I talked about in the introduction, to come on our show and share some of their input on a brief scale. And today we are welcoming Cate Tunney from up in Canada, the Great White North. Welcome, Cate. How are you?
Hello. Hello, Kevin. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, so one of the things that brought me toward Cate, just so everybody knows, is Cate and I both belong to the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. And there's a thing called the Hearth. And we post some different things on there, and there's different circles that are involved. And one of the circles that both of us belong to is a poetry circle. And Cate posted a lovely poem that talked about seasons. And when we think about the stuff that Tim talked about, life is cyclical when you look at it, and it's not linear the way we like to see it, because you move from one season to the next season to the next season. And I saw this one poem that Cate presented on the poetry section, and it was spot on with what we're talking about. But before she reads it, I want Cate, if you would, to just share a little bit about Cate and why do you write and what do you write?
Well, I guess the how and the why are kind of a bit of the same.
Hmm.
I've never had much of a choice.
Okay.
It just happens.
Hmm.
I've always had a connection to word. I remember my father reading out loud when I was a little girl and being fascinated and saying, "Who is that?" And he said, "Oh, it's someone called the Bard." And I was like,
Mm.
"Oh, what's a bard? What is this? What are these magical words that humans can create?" So I was always interested and drawn toward it, but I don't know if I always call it writing poetry. I mean, I edit after the download. I
Hmm.
sometimes call it a download, but it feels more like a channeling process. It's like I'm connecting with something larger than myself,
Hmm.
or not even larger, but just I'm connecting. I'm connecting out into whatever that is. And sometimes they just kind of, spring fully formed from my head, like was it Athena from Zeus's brow? Yeah. So they just they just come through me. It almost feels like. And then sometimes with the raw stuff that I get, I'll do some editing of it afterwards. But I've had ones come through that are just complete as they are. And usually the people standing with me or with me at the time are like, "What was that?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have no idea. Just came through my head."
Well, I know one thing that attracted me in some of the communication we've had on the Hearth is that you started writing, well, I'll say channeling poetry actually, not writing when I was very young. So you related a
Yes.
particular story in that, and I thought it was precious. Share, would you share that with us? I think you were,
Yeah.
let me
Oh,
see, what, around 6 years old?
yeah, well, and I know how old I was because I'm not very good at linear time, but I do remember how old I was because I just finished my first cycle of school.
Uh-huh.
And I turn my birthday's in the summer. So, I was done at the end of June and we were driving somewhere in the car and I was in the back seat and all of a sudden I just started spewing this poem that was about, you know, freedom and the joy of summer and the fact that I was released from my odious bonds of kindergarten, and my mom and dad are in the front seat, right? And my mom turned to she goes, "What? Where'd you get that from?" And I said, I don't know. I don't know where it came from. It just came through my head. But yeah, that was me. Dramatic, even at almost 6 years old. Freedom from the bonds of being chained to a school desk all day. Kindergarten. Oh,
Oh
it's so
yeah.
hard, but
Yeah, it was. Well, it was. For a kindergartner, it is. It's a
it kind of
pretty, yeah,
it's a
you're
culture shock.
it is. I mean, you're out of the family unit into all these other kids that are around you.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Oh,
And
yeah. And
yeah.
someone else's schedule and rhythm and yeah. So,
So speaking of the rhythm,
yes.
tell us a little bit really quick about your poem that we'll have you read here about seasons. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this was another one that it kind of just came through. I mean, my art is something, if you want to call it art, I mean, that might sound a bit pretentious, but to me,
Oh,
art is a very natural part of who we are and how we exist in this world, how we connect into the world, because it is all about connection. But for myself, I mean, right from kindergarten, I was noticed as being a bit of an oddball.
hmm.
Not many 5 and 6 year olds are going around spouting poetry and in love with Shakespeare. So, and I guess I'm a bit of a shy person, but I don't write the poetry really with the objective of maybe sharing it or, it's truly something that happens to me like a meditation, like
Okay.
it's an experience.
Hmm.
The art coming through like that is an experience to me. And when we share our art together, because I love other people's art, I think it just opens us up. And I
Hmm.
think it shifts our paradigms. It's a powerful, powerful thing. And if we want to keep moving forward as a culture and as a planet, then I think we have to keep increasing the ability to connect
Right.
to each other, to the planet, to ourselves, to that ethereal other where the art comes from. You know, who knows where the art comes from, but we have some guesses, but but that's part of the mystery, and that's part of the wonder of it. And it always makes me feel like a little kid again. It's like, oh, new words have come through. What is it this time? And what can I learn from it? So this was one of those poems. It's about seasons and cycles and the spiral of life and art, basically.
So let's hear it.
All right. Without further ado, here's Whispers. The push and pull of art. Dawn brings another round, another brand new start after winter frowned. A turn of season and spring still wept, with no reason, just the secrets that she kept of a summer soon to be, open now and set it free. Whispers of the fall from grace, etched in lines all upon your face. It's appalling sort of mood, with the corset to unlace, that finds the corners to go and brood. Behold it all there, of what you want to be, just up one more stair to the final menagerie. Looking through the mirror cracked at faces turned to skull, thought trails being tracked, cup overflowing from full, setting my soul on fire, men and women made of stars, like some weeping funeral pyre, beholding all we are. All of these reflections of art, creations that crack me open wide and burn into my heart, they take me to the other side.
Wow. And they do kind of take you to the other side, which is what it's all about, isn't it, Kate?
Yeah.
Takes us into a realm of not the hustle and bustle of the day. And like you said, it's like a meditation. If someone's listening and they want to hear about more of your poetry, how would they get in touch with Cate Tunney? What is Kate's web address? Let's have that.
It's catetonney.rmt.ca.
Okay, great. Kate, thanks so much for sharing your art with us today. Blessings to you.
Blessings to you as well.
I want to say a very special thank you to Tim Robinson and Cate Tunney for joining me on this very special episode of Toward a Better Life. We hope you enjoyed our collective journey. You can find all the information to connect with them in the show notes. If you're seeking insights and advice on how to create a better life for yourself over and above the podcast, please do visit my website, towardabetterlife.com. That's towardabetterlife.com. It's continuing to grow with some new blog entries, some new classes, ways to enhance your spiritual journey, a few products here and there to assist you on your journey, including the opportunity to even buy my book, Two Feathers Spiritual Seed Planter. I also offer Toward a Better Life mentoring sessions and other distance-related sessions. Send your request to me, Kevin, at towardabetterlife.com for the details. Join me next time on Toward a Better Life as I welcome Kim Mosman. Kim's a loving wife, mom, and grandma. As an author and as a coach, she specializes in empowering women to embark on their second act. She's a nutritionist with a certification from Precision Nutrition and the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and a wellness coach. That's next time. As I said earlier, if you enjoyed the episode or learned something today, please do consider following and subscribing to Toward a Better Life through your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, whichever you choose. Be sure to leave me a good review because it helps the podcast more than I can say, and it allows us to reach more and more people, which would mean the world to me. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to be my guest, please write me, Kevin at towardabetterlife.com. That's Kevin, towardabetterlife.com. Until next time, enjoy your journey toward a better life.